Hi students, welcome back to our series Explore Income and Employment. So till now we have already understood what is investment multiplier, how it is denoted. So it is denoted with K. Then we also studied the relationship of K with MPC and MPS. Then we also saw what is the maximum value and minimum value of K. So that we have already covered. Next important topic about which we are going to study in this video is excess demand and deficient demand. This is a very important topic from your exams point of view, so we have to be very thorough with this particular concept. First of all, we are going to talk about excess demand and then we are going to see what is deficient demand. With the name itself here, we understand what is excess demand. Excess demand means more of demand in the economy. In a very simple and a layman language, excess demand means more of demand in the economy. Now, when will people demand more? So, people will demand more when they have more income. And how people generate income? With more of investment. So, basically, if there is more investment in the economy, more income will be generated in the economy. More the income, more will be the consumption of people. People will start consuming more. As we have already studied that whenever there is increase in income, consumption will also increase. So, more consumption, that means there will be more demand. This is how the cycle goes on, and that creates the situation of excess demand, wherein the demand in the economy is more than the supply. This is the simple and a basic concept of excess demand. Now, before moving ahead, there is one term which we should know. That is full employment level. Full employment level means all the people who are willing and able to work in the economy are working at its full capacity. That is just the simple meaning of it. Now, to understand excess demand, first of all, we will have to understand its diagram, which is extremely very important. So, let us see what the diagram says. On x-axis, we have income, output and employment. On y-axis, we have AD, that is aggregate demand. Since we are talking about excess demand, we will be talking about ADAS. Now, we know that first equilibrium point is this point wherein AD and AS curve are intersecting with each other. Okay. Now, what is happening? The demand in the economy is increasing. Since the demand in the economy is increasing, your AD curve will shift from AD to AD1. That is, it will shift towards here. So, AD we know is what? C plus I. AD1 will become C plus I plus change in I. That means why your AD is shifting from AD to AD1? Basically, it is shifting since the investment in the economy has been increased. And investment has increased, so that is why here the formula becomes plus change in I. Now you can see that there creates a small gap between AD and AD1, that is this gap. This gap means nothing but inflationary gap, that is inflation. This situation of excess demand will create inflation in the economy. Inflation means what? Prices of goods and services will increase. Because they are limited, prices of goods and services will increase in the economy and hence this will lead to the situation of inflationary gap. In a very simple sense, if we want to draw the diagram, this is x-axis, y-axis, origin. This will show income, output and employment. This will show aggregate demand. We know what is the curve of aggregate supply. It is 45-degree angle. So, this is my AS. Then comes my AD. So, this is my AD. AD is nothing but C plus I. Now, what is happening? The demand in the economy is increasing. It is increasing because as I showed you the cycle, that demand in the economy increases because increase in investment. Increase in investment will lead to increases in income. Increase in income will lead to increase in consumption and hence more the consumption, more will be the aggregate demand. So, that is why now what will happen? My AD curve will shift towards here. Now, my AD becomes C plus I plus change in I, AD1. Change in I means because of change in investment, my AD is increasing, my demand is increasing in the economy. Yes. Now there comes a gap between AD and AD1 curve, and this gap is nothing but inflationary gap. Inflationary gap or inflation is the situation wherein the prices of goods and services increases in the economy, and that happens due to more demand in the economy. Now let us move ahead. You can see that at point E, we have full employment equilibrium. As I already told you all the meaning of it, full employment equilibrium means our economy is working at its full capacity. Now let us understand the meaning of it. Excess demand refers to the situation when AD is more than AS, corresponding to full employment level of output in the economy. So, excess demand is the situation where my AD is more than AS. Maybe the demand in the economy for goods and services might be 500 units, but supply is just 300 units. That means my demand is more than my supply. This situation is only nothing but excess demand, wherein my demand for commodities are more but supply for commodities are less. So this excess of anticipated expenditure over the full employment output. So this situation is studied under full employment equilibrium. That means the economy is working at its full capacity. Excess demand will give rise to inflationary gap. I already showed you the inflationary gap, that the difference between or the gap which is creating between AD and AD1 is the gap of inflation. So this refers to, see, a very important thing, you all should know what do we mean by inflationary gap. So the meaning of inflationary gap is, it refers to the gap by which actual aggregate demand exceeds the aggregate demand required to establish full employment equilibrium. Actual aggregate demand, this is your actual aggregate demand, but it is being increasing. AD1 is increasing, so it is exceeding the actual aggregate demand. When this happens, it creates a inflationary gap in an economy. So this is called as inflationary because this will lead to rise in general price level of the economy. Whenever there is an inflationary situation in the economy, the prices of all the goods and services will increase. So in the diagram, income, output and employment. Now see a very simple diagrammatic explanation. In the diagram, income, output and employment are measured on x-axis, and aggregate demand is measured on y-axis. This is how you have to fill the gap. That in the given diagram, on x-axis we have measured aggregate. In x-axis we have basically written income, output and employment. On y-axis we have taken aggregate demand. AD and AS are going to intersect at point E, which indicates the full employment equilibrium. So if I draw it like this, AS, AD. So the point at which they are intersecting is the equilibrium point. This will be the equilibrium input, output and employment, and this point is nothing but the equilibrium point where AD and AS curve are intersecting with each other, and this situation is the full employment equilibrium situation. This denotes the situation of excess demand, and the gap between them is termed as inflationary gap. So the gap between AD and AD1 is nothing but inflationary gap. So the situation of excess demand generates inflationary pressure in the economy. Larger the inflationary gap, greater will be the inflationary pressure. More the inflationary gap, more will be the inflation in the economy. Lesser the inflationary gap, lesser will be the inflation in the economy. So this is what basically excess demand is the situation. So you should also always know excess demand will create the situation of inflation in the economy. Inflation is the situation where the prices of goods and services will increase. Now, what are the different reasons due to which excess demand situation is created in the economy? Why do we have this situation? First, rise in propensity to consume. We know what is propensity to consume. It is nothing but the tendency to consume of the consumers, that how much they will be consuming, how much proportion of their income they will be consuming. So excess demand will rise because there is increase in consumption expenditure due to rise in propensity to consume or fall in propensity to save. Here what is happening? Basically, people are generating more income. When there is more income in the hands of people, they will consume more. And when they consume more, automatically it leads to increase in demand and decrease in savings. That means people are consuming more as compared to the savings. So if they are consuming more, aggregate demand will increase. Very simple logic this is, that propensity to consume, or it completely depends on propensity to consume, the situation of excess demand. Why? Because when income of consumer increases, people will want to consume more. When people consume more, the demand increases. So that is how your AD will increase, and there will be the rise of situation of excess demand. That means here people want to consume more and save less. There is more income in the economy, there is more money in the economy. Next is reduction in taxes. If there is a reduction in taxes, people will have more disposable income in their hands in order to spend or in order to consume more. For example, in situation 1, the salary of a person is 1000 rupees. Tax deducted is 200. So the disposable income left in the hand of a person is 800. In the second situation, the salary of the person is 1000. Tax is just 100. Remaining amount is 900. So basically, when you can see there is reduction in taxes. First of all, the taxes were for 200. Now the taxes have been reduced to 100. So when there is reduction in taxes, the disposable income increases. Okay. So you can see in first situation, the disposable income was 800. In the second situation, disposable income is 900. So more the money, more will be the consumption. We know that there is a direct relation between income and consumption. So more money, more income will lead to more consumption. More consumption will again increase the demand in the economy. So you can see that reduction in taxes is also a very important factor which leads to the situation of excess demand. Third reason is increase in government expenditure. What if government increases its expenditure in the economy? Government is spending so much in the economy, like continuously it is constructing bridges, dams, buildings, hospitals, institutions. So of course there is more investment in the economy. More investment done in the economy will lead to more income for the people. More income will increase the more consumption of the people, and hence this will again give lead or rise to the aggregate demand in the economy. So rise in government demand for goods and services due to increase in public expenditure will also result in excess demand. I already showed you the cycle, that how it moves and how ultimately it leads to increase in aggregate demand. Fourth is increase in investment. So if there is increase in investment due to decrease in rate of interest or increase in expected returns, for example, the rate of returns have reduced. So people will borrow more. People will borrow more means there will be more money circulated in the economy, more money supply in the economy, and more money in the economy, that means more consumption, and more consumption means more demand for goods and services. So excess demand can also rise when there is increase in investment due to decrease in rate of interest or increase in expected returns. Earlier, the returns which what I was getting was just for 10%, but now I am going to get return for 20%. So that means my returns have increased. If more returns, that means I will want to invest more. That will create or generate more money in the economy. More money in the economy, that means more consumption, and that will ultimately give again rise to increase in demand. Fall in imports. Fall in imports means now we are not buying any goods and services from foreign countries. Import means that only. Import means buying of goods and services from other country. But now we are not buying it. We are making more demand for the goods and services which are generated in our economy, in our domestic territory. So that means that will create or lead to more demand in the economy. So decrease in import due to higher international prices in comparison to domestic prices may also lead to excess demand. One of the reasons why we are demanding more for our domestic goods is more price of international commodities. There is a possibility that importing, there might be increase in taxation, quotas and all while we import goods from foreign countries. So that is the reason we are demanding more for our domestic goods. This will again give increase in aggregate demand because everybody is now consuming domestic goods. Next reason can be rise in export. If exports have increased, that means our domestic people are demanding for the goods. Now, as well as with domestic people or domestic country, there is a demand for our goods in foreign countries as well. They are also exporting goods from our country. Again, this will give a rise to aggregate demand. So, it may also rise when demand for export increases due to comparatively lower prices of domestic goods or due to decrease in the exchange rate for domestic currency. Now, again, there can be multiple reasons why there is rise in exports. Now, few of the reason can be there might be a possibility that the price of domestic goods are cheaper as compared to the price of foreign countries. Then decrease in exchange rate for domestic currency. Now, what is domestic currency, exchange rate, everything we are going to study in our upcoming chapters. But as of for now, understand that the goods which domestic country is producing, that is our country is producing, is cheaper as compared to the foreign countries. So that might be the reason that there is increase in exports. So when people start increasing the demand, there will be again lead to increase in AD. Deficit financing. See, what is deficit financing? Deficit financing means it's one of the policy of RBI which says that you have to start printing more money, more currency. So when RBI starts printing more currency, the money supply in the economy will increase. When money supply in the economy increases, again income is more generated. More income, more consumption. More the consumption, more will be the aggregate demand. So, excess demand may be caused due to increase in the money supply caused by deficit financing. So, due to deficit financing, there is a possibility that there might be more money generated in the economy and more people will demand for goods and services. Deficit financing in simple language is nothing but one of the policy of RBI, that is our central bank, Reserve Bank of India, to print new currency. When they start printing new currency, money supply in the economy will increase. Next, what is the impact of excess demand on income output and employment? Since we have already said that we are going to understand the effects of income output and employment. So, let us see its impact. First, what will be the impact or effect on output? See, as we have already said that we are studying this concept on the assumption of short run basis. So, we already know that in shorter period of time or in short run, it is very difficult to increase the supply. Okay. So, AD is more than AS. The only way to come at this situation of AD equals to AS, the supply needs to be increased. But here we cannot increase the output or we cannot increase the supply since the economy is already working at full employment level, as well as we are studying the concept under short run production function. So, excess demand does not affect, no effect on output. The level of output, because economy is already at full employment level and there is no ideal capacity in the economy. So, economy is already working at its full capacity level, at full employment level. Now, it is very difficult to increase the supply. What will be impact on employment? No impact on unemployment, because we already know that it is the situation of full employment. All the people who are willing and able to work are already working. So you cannot increase more employment. For example, in an economy, there are 100 people who are willing and able to work, and all these 100 people are already working. This is what full employment level is. So we cannot increase more people, we cannot increase more employment. So again, there will be no effect or no change on the employment level, as the economy is already operating at full employment equilibrium and there is no involuntary unemployment. No involuntary unemployment. What is involuntary? See, unemployment can be of two types: voluntary unemployment and involuntary unemployment. Voluntary unemployment means those kind of employment where people are not working by their will and by their choice. They do not want to work. They are getting jobs, but they do not want to work. So those kind of unemployment is called as voluntary unemployment. Involuntary means people who are willing to work, able to work, want to work at the existing wage rate, but still they are not getting jobs. So that is involuntary unemployment. So in the situation of excess demand, there is no problem like involuntary unemployment, because everyone who is able to work, willing to work, accepting the wage rate and are already working. That is what is full employment. So again, we cannot increase the employment level because the economy is already working at its full capacity. Third is effect general price level. What will happen to the general price level of goods and services? So we already know excess demand gives rise to the inflation situation. Inflation situation is the situation where there is increase in the price of goods and services. So general price level will increase. This is going to be the effect or impact of excess demand on general price level. So excess demand leads to rise in general price level known as inflation, as aggregate demand is more than aggregate supply. So whenever the demand is more in the economy, this will always lead to the rise in price level of goods and services. So this was the entire concept of excess demand. Next, we are going to understand what is deficient demand. Deficient demand is basically just opposite of the excess demand. Whatever you studied under excess demand, make it opposite. That is nothing but your deficient demand. So here basically what will happen? Aggregate demand will be more and aggregate supply will be less. That means aggregate demand is just 300 units, but supply of goods and services is 500 units. So means AD is less than AS. So again, we will understand it with the help of an example. X-axis we have income, output, employment. Y-axis we have AD, aggregate demand. This is our AS curve, which is 45-degree angle. Then we have AD curve. This is my original AD curve. This E point is the equilibrium point wherein the economy is working at full employment level. Then now what is happening? Demand is less. My demand has reduced. Why will demand reduce? So when investment in the economy reduces, that means income in the economy will reduce. Income is reducing, that means consumption will reduce. Consumption is reducing, that means my aggregate demand will reduce. And this is what is happening over here. And that is the reason my AD curve moves towards here, that becomes AD1. And I get a new equilibrium point at point F. Again, the gap generated between AD and AD1 is called as deflationary gap. Excess demand will give rise to inflation. Deficient demand will give rise to deflation. So the difference between AD and A1 is AD1 is nothing but deflationary gap. AD is C plus I, AD1 is C plus I minus change in investment. Why minus? Because there is reduction in investment. Since there is reduction in investment, my I will become negative. So again, if I want to draw it, x-axis, y-axis, origin, income, output and employment, AD. My AS curve is going to be 45-degree angle. my AD curve is going to be something like this. AD is C plus I. Now there is decrease in demand. So my AD1 will get reduced. The gap which is being created between AD and AD1 is nothing but deflationary gap. My first equilibrium point was here. Now my equilibrium point shifts towards here. Okay, so that is deflationary gap. Here AD is going to be C plus I. AD1 is going to be C plus I minus change in I. Why minus? Why negative sign in investment? Because under deficient demand, investment reduces. So that is why negative sign. Let us understand the meaning. Deficient demand refers to the situation where aggregate demand is less than aggregate supply, corresponding to full employment level of output in the economy. That means my AD is less than AS. Again, the situation over here is full employment. Situation of deficient demand arises when planned expenditure falls short of aggregate supply at full employment level. That means the expenditure, aggregate expenditure or the consumption expenditure of a consumer has been reduced, which the seller might have thought. So it gives rise to deflationary gap. What is deflationary gap? Very important. Gap by which actual aggregate demand falls short of aggregate demand required to establish full employment equilibrium. This is full employment equilibrium level. So this is nothing but my deflationary gap. Concept of deficient demand and deflationary gap already seen in the diagram. Now diagrammatic explanation. Income, output, employment are measured on x-axis. Aggregate demand is measured on y-axis. AD-AS curve intersect at point which indicates the full employment equilibrium. So, this was my original AS and my original AD. Point E is nothing but my full employment equilibrium. Due to decrease in investment aggregate demand, demand will fall from AD to AD1. So, this was my AD. It had fallen to AD1 because of decrease in investment in the economy. So, this will denote the situation of deficient demand and will give rise to the gap, and that gap is termed as deflationary gap. Point F indicates underemployment equilibrium. It may be noted that during deficit demand, equilibrium is determined at a level less than full employment. It leads to underemployment equilibrium. Underemployment means what? People are not working at its full capacity. In this situation, there will exist involuntary unemployment. Involuntary unemployment means all those people who are willing to work, want to work, able to work at the existing wage rate, but still they are not getting job. That kind of unemployment is called as involuntary unemployment. Now again, there are various reasons for deficient demand. Okay, do the opposite of the reasons what we studied under this demand, excess demand. Okay, so that is how you can remember. There are 7-8 reasons in both. Not necessary you have to remember all. Any 4 to 5 are okay. Remember one thing and do just opposite of that thing. If you want to learn excess demand, learn excess demand and then just do the opposite of it. So under excess demand, our first reason was increase in propensity to consume. But as you can see here, our first reason is decrease in propensity to consume. Decrease in propensity to consume, that means there is decrease in investment. Less investment in the economy means less income generated in the economy. Lesser the income, lesser will be the consumption, and lesser the consumption, that means less aggregate demand. The demand has reduced. People now don't want to spend their income on consumption. Rather, they are not consuming. So, a decrease in consumption expenditure due to fall in propensity to consume will lead to the deficient demand in the economy. People are not interested to consume or spend money in the economy, which will lead to the situation of deficient demand. Next, increase in taxes. So, again we will take a very simple example. Say suppose salary was 1000 rupees, tax was 100 rupees. Disposable income was 900. Disposable income in the hands of the person was 900. Now salary is 1000 rupees. Tax has increased to 200 rupees. Disposable income reduces to 800. Lesser the disposable income, lesser will be the consumption in economy, and lesser the consumption, that means lesser the aggregate demand in the economy. So whenever there is increase in taxes, aggregate demand will reduce. So AD may fall due to imposition of higher taxes. This will lead to decrease in disposable income, and as a result economy suffers the deficient demand. So here in this example, very clearly you can see that in situation 1 the tax was 100 rupees, in situation 2 tax increased to 200 rupees. So accordingly my disposable income also gets changed, and since there is change in disposable income, the aggregate demand will also reduce. Decrease in government expenditure. What if government stops investing in economy? Now government is not investing in constructing bridge, infrastructure, buildings or anything. So there will be less investment. So that means less income. Less income generated in the economy, that means less consumption, and that will lead to less aggregate demand. So when government reduces its demand for goods and services due to fall in public expenditure, this will lead to again in deficit demand. Fall in investment expenditure. Now there is increase in rate of returns or fall in expected returns. This will again lead to decrease in investment expenditure. Lesser investment in the economy means lesser income is generated in the economy. Lesser the income, lesser the consumption, and hence this will again lead to decrease in aggregate demand, which will give rise to the situation of deficient demand. Next is rise in imports. We are bringing more goods from other countries. We are importing goods from other countries. Possible reason for it is that the international prices are less than the comparison to the domestic prices. So that is why there is increase in imports. Increase in imports means what? Aggregate demand for domestic goods are reduced. Fall in exports. Now people are not demanding goods from other countries. Okay, under excess demand we have seen increase in exports. Under deficit demand there is fall in exports. That means here what will happen, here people are not demanding for our domestic goods. So exports may fall due to high prices of domestic goods or due to increase in exchange rate of domestic currency, which will again give rise to deficit demand. So because of increase in the price of domestic goods or increase in the exchange rate for domestic currency, my aggregate demand will fall, and this will give rise to deficit demand. Again, the impact of deficit demand on input, output and employment. First, what will be the effect of output? So, due to lack of sufficient aggregate demand, there will be increase in the inventory stock. This will force the firm to plan lesser for production for the subsequent period. As a result, plan output will fall. What is happening? Already my aggregate supply is of 500 units, but my aggregate demand is just for 300 units. That means 200 units are extra kept in my inventory. So if as it is 200 is extra, why will a seller will supply more goods? He will always want to clear his stock. He will always want to clear his inventory first and then increase the production or increase the output. So here what he will do, he will first of all wait that let me clear my inventory of this 200 units also, and then I will start producing. Till then he will reduce his output. So the impact on output is reduction in output. On employment, so this causes involuntary unemployment in the economy due to fall in the planned output. Now, output has been stopped or output has been reduced. So we have people, no, we have employees who are working for us. Why will I keep those people if I don't want to produce anything for next 6 months, 1 year, 2 years or whatever it is? So I will ask these employees to leave my company, to leave the job. And this will give the situation of involuntary unemployment. That means people did not wanted to leave the job. These employees did not wanted to leave the job, but they are being forced to leave the job because they have no work. Since my output has been reduced, I don't need people working for me. It will be creating unnecessary expense for me. If suppose I am the worker or I am the supplier, if I am reducing my output, that means I don't want to do any more production of goods and services. If I don't want to do any production, why will I keep these people to work for me? I will ask them to leave. Effect on general price level. So this will reduce the prices of goods and services. So on price level, there will be reduction in the prices of goods and services. So this causes general price level to fall due to lack of demand for goods and services. Since nobody is demanding for the goods and services and seller want to clear off their stock, so that is why they will reduce the prices of their goods and services. So this is what was the concept of excess demand and deficient demand. So we understood now what is excess demand and deficient demand. Now what should we do to correct the situation of excess demand or deficient demand? Because both the situations are not good for the economy. We don't want our economy to be either in excess demand or either be in deficit demand. So there are different measures which are taken to solve these both the situation. So next we are going to see those measures. First we will see the measure of correcting excess demand. We know what is excess demand. Excess demand is the situation where aggregate demand is more than aggregate supply. That means AD is high in the economy. AD is high in the economy because money supply is more in the economy. That cycle we have understood yesterday. Now what do we have to do actually? So we want our AD to reduce. We want our AD to reduce. So how will our AD reduce in the economy? So for that, we will have to reduce money supply in the economy. If money supply in the economy reduces, income in the economy will reduce. And when income reduces, consumption will reduce and automatically aggregate demand of the country will reduce. So let us see what are the different measures. So basically there are two measures, that is monetary policy and fiscal policy. Monetary policy are done through RBI, that is Reserve Bank of India. These are the policies which are created by RBI, and fiscal policies are the policies which are created by the government in order to control the situation of excess demand. And what happens in excess demand? There is a rise in price of goods and services. So basically it leads to inflation. So let us see one by one. First we are going to start with the monetary policy. So as I already said, monetary policy is the policy which has been given to us by RBI, that is the Central Bank of India. So monetary policy is the policy of Central Bank of a country to control money supply and availability of credit in the economy. So basically monetary policies will be the policies which will control the money supply in the economy and which will reduce the credit availability in the economy. So again, central bank takes two steps, that is quantitative instruments and qualitative instruments. First of all, we will talk about quantitative instruments. So these are the instruments of monetary policy which will affect overall supply of money and credit in the economy. So quantitative instrument will talk about or will focus on overall supply of money and credit in the economy. These instruments do not direct or restrict the flow of credit to some specific sectors of the economy. So these are the quantitative instruments. So let us one by one see all the instruments and understand the logic behind it. So basically this is how we can control. First is increase in bank rate. So first of all, what is bank rate? Bank rate is nothing but the rate at which central bank gives or provides loan to the commercial bank. That rate is called as bank rate. Okay. So we know that central bank usually lends money to commercial bank. But will it do it for free of cost? No. they will charge interest on it. So that interest is nothing but bank rate. This is usually done for long term period. Okay, so here central bank is providing loan to commercial bank for a longer period of time. So basically, when there is too much of money flowing in the economy, what we do or what RBI does, RBI reduces that flow of money in the economy. So for that, what will RBI do? RBI will increase its bank rate. See, we know that commercial bank gives loan to the borrowers. Commercial bank lends loan to the borrowers, and if the commercial bank is lending loan to the borrowers, they will be charging interest rate. That is called as interest rate. Okay. So if central bank increases the bank rate, of course, commercial bank will also increase its interest rate. If interest rate has been increased, it will definitely discourage the borrowers to borrow money from the commercial bank. So people will get discouraged and people will not borrow loan from the commercial bank, and that will reduce the flow of money in the economy, because now people are not borrowing money from the commercial bank. So once the flow of money has reduced in the economy, consumption will reduce. Consumption reduces, that means my AD will automatically get reduced, and this is what we want in the situation of excess demand. So first thing what RBI will do is increase in the bank rate. RBI will quickly increase its bank rate. Second, increase in repo rate. Repo rate, we know what is repo rate. Again, the rate at which central bank lends money to the commercial bank for short span of time or for short period. Okay. So when repo rate increases, okay, when central bank increases the repo rate, commercial bank will increase its interest rate. Now again, if interest rate has been increased, people will be discouraged to borrow money from commercial bank. So again, people will stop borrowing from the commercial bank. Hence, money flow in the economy will reduce. So lesser income, that means lesser consumption. Lesser consumption will ultimately lead to reduce in aggregate demand. Okay, so increase in repo rate. Repo rate will also be increased by the RBI. Next is open market operations. We know what is OMO. Open market operation means nothing but buying and selling of securities by the central bank. So during the situation of excess demand, central bank will sell its securities. And then what will happen? Commercial bank will get attracted to buy the securities of the central bank, and commercial bank will invest its maximum money to buying the securities of central bank. And then once commercial bank spends their money over here, automatically the deposit with the commercial bank gets reduces, right? So their lending capacity will also reduce. Lending capacity of commercial bank reduces, that means borrowers do not have enough amount of money to borrow, and that will ultimately reduce the money supply in economy, and then aggregate demand will reduce. For simple example, just understand what will happen. Commercial bank will buy the securities, will be buying securities from the central bank. Say suppose commercial bank had deposits of 1000 rupees, out of which it is buying the securities from central bank for say suppose 800 rupees. Now commercial bank is left with only 200 rupees. So with this 200 rupees, the lending capacity of commercial bank reduces. So in this case, the commercial bank will reduce its lendings to the borrowers. That will reduce the money supply in the economy, which will ultimately lead to reduction in consumption, and finally our AD of the economy will reduce. Okay. Next is increase in LRR. See, as we have already talked about it, LRR is something called as legal reserve ratio. LRR can be again of two types, that is CRR and SLR. CRR is cash reserve ratio, SLR is statutory liquidity ratio. Cash reserve ratio means the percentage of the deposits which the commercial bank has to keep with central bank. Okay, so here they have to keep it with central bank. Whereas statutory liquidity ratio means the number or the proportion of deposit which the commercial bank has to keep it with themselves. So that is called as LRR. Now, for example, the total deposit with the bank is 1000 rupees, out of which CRR is 100 rupees and SLR is 100 rupees. So that means total 800 rupees is left in the hands of the commercial bank in order to lend it. Okay, so now 800 rupees has been left to lend it to the borrowers. But now we don't want to give more money to the borrowers because already money supply is increased in the economy. So in that case, what will be the central bank doing? Central bank will increase the CRR as well as the SLR. So what he will do? 1000 rupees is the total deposit, 200 is CRR, 200 is SLR. That means only 600 is left with the commercial bank to lend it to the borrowers. So again, during the situation of excess demand, CRR and SLR is increased by the RBI. Now RBI says that you have to keep more proportion of your deposits with yourself and more proportion of deposits with our bank, that is with central bank. So to correct excess demand, central bank will again increase CRR and SLR. It reduces amount of effective cash resource of commercial bank and limit their credit creating power. It ultimately helps in reducing credit availability in the economy. See here, first of all, what was happening? Only 100 rupees SLR and 100 rupees CRR. But now during the excess demand, RBI will increase the SLR and CRR so that the total deposits left in the hands of commercial bank is less. So accordingly, commercial bank will not have enough amount of money to lend it to the borrowers, and ultimately less money will flow in the economy. Lesser money in the economy, lesser income. Lesser income will ultimately leads to lesser aggregate demand. Those were all our quantitative measures. Now let us see qualitative instruments. First is increase in margin requirement. What is margin requirement? Margin requirement is nothing but the total value of market of collateral security or security and the amount of loan or amount of money lent to the borrowers. Okay, the difference between the market value of collateral security and amount of loan given. So say suppose the market value of collateral security is 10,000. So the loan granted to that borrower would be around 8,000. Okay, because the loan granted will always be less than the value of collateral security. So in this case, in the situation of excess demand, what will RBI do? RBI will increase the margin requirements. That means earlier RBI was giving or the margin requirements was 8,000. If your value of collateral security is 10,000, you will get loan for 8,000. But now what has happened? If your value of collateral security is 10,000, you will be getting loan of not 9,500. You will be getting loan of, say suppose, 6,000. So margin requirement has increased. That means now the amount of loan which will be sanctioned is lesser. So during this time, borrowers will become discouraged and they will not want to borrow money by keeping their collateral security. Next is moral suasion, advice to discourage lending. Moral suasion means what? Any policy or anything which is coming up new or which is made by RBI, they pass it to the commercial bank. They will pass it to the commercial bank. How do they pass these messages? So these messages are passed through conferences, seminars, workshops, speech, letters, etc. So here, whenever there is excess demand situation, RBI will pass the message to commercial bank that please reduce the credit availability. Stop giving loan for speculative or any unnecessary or non-productive activities. This message will be passed by RBI to the commercial bank. All the commercial bank will have to agree to the RBI, and then commercial bank will reduce giving loan or providing loan to the people. Now borrowers will not get loan, borrowers will not get money. That will ultimately reduce the income generation in the economy. Reduction in income means reduction in consumption, and if consumption reduces, ultimately your AD reduces, and this is what you want. Okay, you want your AD to reduce. Selective credit control or credit rationing. Now RBI will again pass the message to do credit rationing. Credit rationing means you are or commercial bank is allowed to provide loans to only and only to a particular sector. Do not provide loan to everyone and anyone who is coming to you. There will be only particular sector to whom you can grant the loan. So this is what is credit rationing. So in this case, again RBI will put this particular kind of situation wherein commercial bank are allowed to provide loan to only specific sectors which have been given by RBI. Then comes the fiscal policy. Fiscal policy is given by government. Okay, these are the measures which are given by government. So government can give only two measures. First, decrease in government spending. Decrease in government spending or increase in taxes. Decrease in government spending, we know government spend on different things in the economy for constructing road, bridges, dams, institutions, hospitals and so on. So now what can government do? Government can reduce spending on all of these things. Now if government will not construct a road, then but obvious employment will reduce. Employment will reduce, that means income will reduce. Income reduces, that means consumption reduces, and consumption will reduce, then what will happen? Ultimately, my AD, my aggregate demand in the economy will also reduce. So what should government do? Government should decrease the government spending on different kind of things. And increase in taxes. Government should increase the taxes on goods and services. So that will make the goods and services expensive for the people. When goods and services become expensive for people, people will stop demanding for the products, right? They will reduce the demanding of their products, and that is what we want. We want our AD to reduce, and for that government should increase its taxes. So these were the measures to correct excess demand. Next is the measures to correct deficient demand. Very simple. Whatever we did in excess demand, you just have to do the opposite of it over here. So again, you have two measures, monetary policy given by RBI and fiscal policy given by government. So first of all, let us talk about monetary policy. So it is the policy of Central Bank of country for controlling money supply and availability of credit in the economy. Again, here also we have two instruments, quantitative instruments and qualitative instruments. So first of all, quantitative instrument, here what will happen? Decrease in bank rate. What is bank rate? Bank rate is the rate at which central bank provides loan to the commercial bank for a longer period of time, long time. Okay. So here what is deficit demand basically? Deficit demand means AD is less and AS is more. So what do we want to do? We want to increase our AD. We want our aggregate demand to increase in the economy. In order to increase the AD in economy, we will have to increase the money supply in economy. Yes, so we will take all the measures which will increase the money supply in economy so that my AD also increases. First measure for that is decrease in bank rate. So that is nothing but the loan provided by the central bank to the commercial bank for a longer period of time. Here what will happen? Here opposite will happen. That means there will be decrease in bank rate. Central bank will give loan to the commercial bank and will decrease the bank rate. So if bank rate decreases, interest rate, commercial bank will decrease its interest rate as well. When interest rate decreases, it encourages the borrowers to borrow money from bank, to take loan from bank. When they borrow money from the commercial bank, money flow in the economy will increase. And then, of course, consumption will increases. When consumption increases, AD also increases, and that is what we want. Then decrease in repo rate. Again, repo rate is the rate at which central bank provides loan to commercial bank for a short period of time. Now, when RBI reduces the repo rate, commercial bank will also reduce its interest rate. Now, when again interest rate is reducing, people will be more keen and encouraged to borrow money from commercial banks, and then more money will start flowing in the economy. More money, that means more consumption. More consumption means more AD. AD will increase, and this is what we want under deficient demand. Then comes OMO, that is open market operation. OMO is nothing but buying and selling of securities by the central bank. Under deficient demand, under the situation of deficient demand, a central bank will start purchasing securities. Okay, central bank will start purchasing securities. When central bank purchases securities, that means it is giving money in the economy. So that money in the economy will come and start flowing in the economy. So money supply increases in the economy due to the purchase of securities done by the central bank. If you remember, under excess demand, central bank was selling the securities, but under deficient demand, it is going to buy securities, so that when they buy, they will be doing payment for that, and that payment will flow in the economy, which will ultimately generate income in the economy. So income will increase, that means consumption will increase. When consumption increases, aggregate demand increases, and this is what we want. Fourth is decrease in LRR. So, I already said LRR is nothing but CRR and SLR. Cash reserve ratio is the certain proportion of deposits of a commercial bank which needs to be kept with central bank, that is RBI, and SLR is nothing but the certain proportion of the deposits which needs to be kept with themselves. So, say suppose earlier it was 100. But during the time of deficient demand, RBI will reduce its CRR. Say suppose now it makes it to 50. Okay, so here bank had, say suppose, total deposit of 1000 in first situation. 100 was CRR, 100 was SLR. So that means bank had 800 rupees to lend to the borrowers. But now what has bank done? Bank wants to increase the flow of money in economy. So that is why they are reducing the CRR and SLR by 50-50. So now bank will be having 900 rupees to lend it to the borrowers. Now more money will be there in the hands of commercial bank. So more money can be lended to the borrowers. When more money is lended to the borrowers, there will be more money in the economy. Money supply of the economy will increase. That will lead to increase in consumption, and basically increase in consumption means aggregate demand increases, and this is what our ultimate goal is. Then comes qualitative instruments, decrease in margin requirements. So earlier, market value of collateral security 1000, margin requirement, the loan granted to the person was, say suppose, 900. But now, during the time of deficit demand, to encourage people for borrowing loans, say suppose 1000 rupees is the market value, now people will be getting 9500. That will encourage people more to borrow money or to take more money. Moral suasion, advice to encourage lending. Now see, here we want to increase our AD. AD can be only increased when money supply increases. To increase money supply, RBI says whoever wants loan, you can give loan. Provide loan to this will be the message given to the all commercial banks. Moral suasion is what? Giving messages, policies and everything from central bank to commercial bank in the form of speeches, writing, conferences, seminars, etc. So here RBI will guide, or RBI will say to all the commercial bank that please provide loans to every productive activities. There is no deduction on anything. Give loans to everyone. in order to increase money supply in the economy. So now commercial bank will provide loans to maximum people that will ultimately generate my money supply or money flow in the economy, which will ultimately lead to increase in AD. Selective credit control, withdrawal of credit rationing. That means now central bank will say to commercial bank that there is no credit rationing. You can provide loans to everyone who needs to borrow or who comes to borrow. Last, fiscal policy, increase in government spending or reduction in taxes. Here one more we can say, provide subsidies. Subsidies is nothing but giving discounts. Okay. Increase in government spending. See, what do we want? We want our AD to increase. AD can only be increased when money supply increases in the economy, right? So now what will happen? Government will start spending in the economy, start doing construction of road, bridges, dams, schools, institutions, etc. That will generate more employment. More people will be working. More the work, more will be the income. So income in the economy will increase. Income increases, people will start consuming. When consumption increases, my AD, that is aggregate demand, will ultimately start increasing. And next is reduction in taxes. Reduce the taxes of goods and services. That will make the goods and services cheaper for people. When the goods and services, price of goods and services reduces, people will demand more. That is nothing but your fundamental truth, law of demand. When price increases, demand decreases. When price decreases, demand increases. So when there will be reduction in taxes, the goods and services will become cheaper for everyone and people will start consuming more. More consumption means more AD or more aggregate demand. So that is what the fiscal policy or the policy given by the government is. Or subsidies though is nothing but the discounts which should be given. Start giving discounts to people, people will buy more commodities as it is. Thank you for watching our video. For more updates, reach us on www.tgcampus.com or 1800-267-2677 or connect@tgcampus.com. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel TG Campus In. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook and WhatsApp. Join our official Telegram channel TG Campus In. Chat with us on 8655682401.